Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. On today's episode, I have got Lizzie Coles, who is the head of product at Fuuse. So Lizzie, lovely to meet you. Thank you ever so much for joining me.
Hi, nice. Thanks for having me. Actually, very excited. It's my first podcast. So.
I know, and you don't need to be worried because I'm not a horrible person.
No, I know.
Or else I would be probably on some other TV program or a TV program where I'm being horrible, but I'm not like that. Anyway, no. Right.
Or on Twitter.
So let's just talk a little bit about you. So you're head of product at Fuuse. You've also been you were previously head of product at PodPoint, and you've worked in kind of with product for quite a while in agile environments anyway, haven't you? So it'd be really good to have a little chat about your background and how you kind of got into what you're doing now. You know, has product been something that you've been interested in for a long time, I suppose is my question.
Yeah, it has actually. So I've worked, as you said, I've worked in product for a long time, probably since around 2006. I was at Leeds City Council at the beginning. Prior to that, was sort of graduate jobs, but and there we had a big agenda around the government agenda, and it was at that point where making some of these processes for application forms of blue badges or whatever much easier to do online is where I kind of really kind of connected with solving customer problems actually, and making it easier, faster, cheaper for people to do certain things online, and it kind of grew from there. So I worked there for quite some time, and then I moved to London and started working for a gambling operator where I was head of product there for quite a long time. We grew very, very fast, very sort of rapid, agile environment where we sort of test, learn, iterated on features, all centered around B2C, business to customer, which is just solving customer problems really fast. And it's really motivating. It's a really rewarding kind of thing to see something come into fruition so quickly. And it becomes, I guess, quite attractive to stay in that space and that way of working. So it was just the ability to see sort of continuous improvement and feedback through data or through usage of the apps and websites was what kept me there, I guess. So I worked there for quite a long time, and then it got to the point, I suppose, with that industry, as much as I loved it, and actually I've got some of my best friends for life from there, that I wanted to solve a more positive problem with technology. And I also have a deep love of cars, fast cars, traditionally petrol cars actually. So I'm going to say I'm a reformed petrolhead. Really, almost.
I like the reformed bit.
Although I'd still probably quite like a Porsche GT3 RS, but that's all but yeah. And so I thought, is there a way that I can combine product and cars? I didn't really want to work for an OEM necessarily, and sort of getting into sort of green tech when I moved to PodPoint was a great combination, because it allowed me to solve a more positive problem with technology and also get a bit more closer to cars and a new type of car, which was EVs. So it was a great opportunity. So I moved there as head of product. It was a steep learning curve, have to say, different industry, much slower paced, actually. A different technical landscape entirely, because it's hardware. Hadn't really worked on hardware products in the past. Did a little bit when I was at the National Lottery, because I was head of mobile there for a short time. So we had a few, retail, more than a few actually, retail outlets. So it was a bit of a step away from that. So yeah, it was a really interesting time. And then it was there where I set about just really trying to understand the industry and all the different components and different things that went into it, which, as you probably know, is a complex landscape actually, which of course gets passed on to the consumer in various different guards, which is whether it's multiple apps or different experiences across the board. So yeah, it sort of stemmed from there, and loved it there, was there for about 4 years, and then I moved to Fuuse, which is great because I'm back in software, software. So this is kind of my wheelhouse, and also a refined sort of amount of different customers we're looking at. So at Pod Point, we did everything from installs to domestic charging to fleet to workplace to public, the whole lot. Whereas Fuuse is more focused around public charging, workplace. And we do have driver apps, but we're very much sort of on the B2B side of things, and we're primarily a charge point management system. So for large businesses or small who have charge points, they have a car park, they need to be able to manage them. So we do all the connections with via OCPP to manage their actual charge points, their units. We do all sorts of features in the back office system that allow people to either set prices, set tariffs, control opening hours, control all the different sort of charge point access controls that you can imagine that a customer would want from a commercial perspective. We manage. And we also have a range of different driver apps which allow people to start, stop, charge, find a charge point, that type of thing. So the list goes on in terms of sort of features, but it's a very feature-rich offering, and it's great to be sort of in that space really, and be part of the industry, which is ever growing and ever changing.
It is, like you say, it's always. Sometimes you kind of you could sort of. We've been writing posts on charging for a little while now, and sometimes you can write it like a week and a half. And before, and then by the time it's actually out, something's changed.
Yeah.
So yeah, as it kind of moves just really, really quickly, it's kind of like, oh okay, no, that's not happening anymore. That's something else now.
Yeah, it's evolved again. But for me personally, it's part of the attraction being part of a new industry and new tech and an evolving market is just something that's something I'm really keen and passionate about really. And I think again, if I can be at the forefront of solving customer problems that are new, it's something that's what motivates me, I guess.
Right. So just going back a step, you were just saying as well about how Fuuse integrates into the hardware itself.
Yeah.
And obviously there'll be people like myself who don't know loads about how how it works inside. Within that hardware, there are various interfaces, aren't there?
Yes.
What are that? You did kind of allude to a couple of things there, but if I walked up to a charger, I'm not going to know it's Fuuse, am I? That's inside.
No. Not necessarily. So often, I guess it's a bit like how a load of phones connect. So we've all got our operating systems on our phones, and charge points are the same. And they on the main, connect using a standard operating system called OCPP. And Fuuse's back office system connects to that OCPP operating system, and it basically brings your chargers online, and therefore you can see your range of chargers, where they are, what tariffs they have on, all that type of thing in our back office system. So if you're someone who's running a hotel and has two chargers in their car park or whatever, you can bring them onto our back office system. You can set a tariff, you can set times when you want them to be used, you can see how much they're being used, you can see how much they're earning for you essentially. So it's we're in this very fortunate position whereby anyone who has a car park who's going to get chargers installed could in theory be our customer. And so that's kind of one use case, if you like. And then from a driver's perspective, we do a number of different white label apps. So if you're a CPO who operate a charge point operator, who have a number of public units who are there on the public network, we can offer you an app. We can brand it as you like it, and that allows the driver to download that app. You can go and find the charge point, start a charge using all the different payment methods, and add in like the charge cards, RFID cards, all of those different things. So we've also got a number of different sort of roaming connections and integrations with a lot of different providers such as ZapMap or ElectricVehicles, that type of thing. So we really do offer that whole sort of user experience from a kind of company who've got charge points that they want to own and manage. So all the sort of software that is sort of related to that is something that we offer. And in addition to that, if you think you've got energy constraints on your site, so you don't know how much your supply is, that type of thing, we can also monitor that, so we can probably tell you the best combination or flavour of charge units to have on your site, measure that, make sure you're sort of using that sort of supply cost effectively and from a resource side of things. So it is quite a one-stop shop for people who want to operate charge points.
That's really interesting, actually. Does that mean also, so you're looking at energy usage, does it also provide you that kind of ability to sort of proactively look it to see if there's, so for example, if there's maintenance due or if there's any error messages coming up
Yeah.
on the charger or that kind of stuff?
Yeah, that's right. So these charge points, once they're connected via OCPI and OCPP, which is two different operating systems that are supposedly universally recognised in the industry, they give you information back and forth about what the charger's doing, whether they're in use, whether it's available, whether it's broken, whether it's down, that type of thing. And all of that data is contained in dashboards on our platform, so you can see at any given time what's going on. So it's like your eyes and ears as a owner of a charge point as to what's happening. Yeah.
Okay, so what about so obviously as we're sort of moving forwards with EV adoption and
Yeah.
the number of chargers are kind of increasing, can people can your sort of dashboard, will it allow people to kind of look at, right, okay, we've got full utilization on all of these chargers, so that but and actually we've noticed we've even got a bit of queuing here going on.
Yeah.
Will it actually kind of identify, right, okay, well you'll probably need 2 or 3 more chargers or something like that?
Yeah, it could do, and I think we could do. We regularly feed back to customers around. You've got a lot of utilisation in this particular site. If you're using our energy management product, you can look to see if you've got any spare capacity, because obviously it's not just charging on that site. Generally, there's other things like there might be a shop or a cafe or a restaurant or whatever there is, and I think we can monitor that site to say what capacity have you got available. And in doing so, we can suggest to people, actually, if you put 2 more AC units in there, for example, the slightly lower powered, you could spread your utilisation a bit. So yes, we do help inform, operators where they should be putting their units and what capacity they've got available to do so.
Right. Wow. So that would make a massive difference for somebody kind of moving forward. So okay, what would a day in the life of somebody using your dashboard look like? I mean, as in,
Yeah.
what would that? Who would it be? Most, you said, anybody with a car park. But
Generally,
who
yeah.
who mostly are your, kind of the customers
Our
that
main
you've got?
customers. Yeah, so our main clients really are people who've either got fleets, who are managing workplace charging. So, if they're charging at vans, or they've got depot charging, so a fleet manager, for example, or a utilities manager who's managing a work car park, or it could be someone who's working within like a hotel reception, if you like. So it kind of depends on their role in the business. But anyone who's kind of got that sort of facilities overview, who want to know who managing people charging at their workplace. That would be one use case for the sort of, the workplace charging. And then from the public side of things, a day in the life of them is actually understanding utilisation and cost. So how much are these things earning me? And often we find that sort of workplace charging, the fact that they log in once every couple of weeks is a good thing, because nothing's broken and it's all fine. Whereas someone who's a top tier CPO, whose business it is that is public charging, they'll be in it on a daily basis, checking to make sure there's no errors, there's no issues to be reported, there's no maintenance, coming up, or there's no problems for drivers. And either use case is solved or supported by the Fuuse back office system.
Blimey. Okay, so if we look at, because I don't know how many I don't normally ask people about competitors, and I don't know how many. You don't need to say who they are, but
Yeah.
would you say how many competitors would you say are out there in the market compared? Because
What we're
I've
doing.
heard I've
Yeah.
heard News quite a lot.
Yeah.
But compared to what other people do, are you offering something that's kind of very unique, or are there other companies that are kind of offering similar products, or?
There are a few out there, yeah, of course, and they're offering a similar flavour of those, and I'll probably get shot if I mention who they are, but yes, there are.
Don't worry.
But there are a few out there, but I think, our strengths lie in our sort of customer service, our offering, and the fact that we're UK based. And our system is, because it's a complex landscape we're in, it's actually quite simple to use. So we've tried to make it sort of as frictionless as possible. If you don't want to log into another platform or another system at work, you just want to go in, see a dashboard, see what's going on with the chargers, job done. So I think from that perspective, I think our sort of USP is around our sort of service and sort of customer experience offering within the dashboard. And we're generally quite fast in terms of time to market and our reliability side of things as well. It's quite a stable offering. And, because we're focused on, B2B customers and offering the driver apps, it allows us to be very much focused on that. We're not manufacturing stuff. We are hardware agnostic. So we're not having to worry about installations as well as building software as well as doing everything else. So it's quite a nice sort of targeted place to be, if you like.
I was going to say, so do you also integrate payment into everything as well, don't you?
Yeah, we do. So we've got a number of different payment, manufacturers of payment readers, so like the actual contactless readers, if you like. We liaise with those, and also the back office sort of payment processing side of things. So all of that data is kind of aggregated into the platform, so you can see the performance of, the contactless payments coming through, the web payments if it's on Stripe or whatever it is. So you have essentially a full picture of how your charge point, your asset really, is performing, be it in the public space or in workplace.
I was going to say, because like we talked about this before we started recording, didn't we? About the customer journey.
Yeah.
For all of these things is kind of quite different across the different public charging and private networks.
Yeah,
I know that we've got the charge point regulations that came out last November.
Yeah.
So therefore, that it kind of started off with pricing metrics, didn't it? Clear pricing, and then there's kind of I think most of it, the rest of it comes in. Most of it comes in the rest of this year, doesn't it? I think it's November.
Yeah.
So reliability, helpline, open data, and then there's roaming within. I think it's November next year, isn't it? So all of this has to be integrated. Is this all or everything that you can offer a charge point operator, so that it's kind of together now?
Yeah, essentially. So what we're sort of pulling together now at the moment, because obviously the bulk of the requirements come in November this year, is basically offering like a toolkit, as it were, to support charge point operators or workplaces, but it's mainly charge point operators in the public space, to be compliant with the regulation. And there's the premise behind the regs are great, actually, because it's all about making the user experience better for the customer and making public charging more accessible and just better, easier to use, which is overdue, if you like, because to be honest, it is a bit of a free-for-all. You can install any different flavour of hardware, payment reader, app. There's all of those things always have to work together in tandem to actually deliver a decent experience. And I think some of the regs that are coming in are making that a lot better. So, for example, making sure that all DC units have to have a contactless reader. I mean, it's infinitely less friction for most people just to be able to tap their card. It's a rehearsed, behaviour for a lot of people. So I think that's great. But I think, as we spoke briefly before, it feels in some ways we might have missed a trick, actually, because if you just skip to the point where we're doing plug and charge or auto charge, you wouldn't pass the cost of getting a payment reader and contactless readers retrospectively installed onto these units as a problem that the industry then have to solve as well. So I think there's more to be done, for sure, to make the whole experience better, but it's certainly a step in the right direction, for sure.
And we talked as well before we started recording about kind of that we talked about plug and charge, but also the kind of the OEM side of things, so the vehicle manufacturers. And it's about certain things talking to one another, isn't it? So it's the car and the charger talking to each other, and then it's talking to other bits within the charger. So theoretically, you need the OEM on board, don't you? You need the manufacturer on board in order to kind of, if you want to move the EV driver journey to be if you want it to be the most seamless it can be, that's kind of what you need, really, isn't it?
It is really, and I think that's quite a hard conversation with some of these big OEMs, and a lot of them are supporting it. And I never get the number right. It's iOS 151 118 or
450,
something.
118, yeah,
Yeah,
something like that.
that's the kind of communication standard that the charge point units in the cars all have to have working in tandem, would all have to be aligned, and it's certainly getting better. But I think there'll be some legacy units out there and legacy cars that won't support that, and that is a challenge, because it then calls into question people having newer EVs all the time, and the costs are prohibitive, and so it is a difficult conversation to be had. But I think if we could, it basically turns your car into a wallet essentially. So it's quite nice. You don't have to worry about it, and providing you've got an up-to-date card or payment method associated, you can rock up to a charge point in the public network. Which and it'll be a seamless experience. So I think there is more to be done, but I think given like I say, given what I've said, it's a good step in the right direction for sure. And Fuuse is an organisation, given that we're UK based, very, very keen to be that trusted partner behind EV charging for customers. So it's something that we're very keen to support people with, to make sure that we're all compliant.
And like you say, so a lot of the stuff that you're providing will give that charge point operator some of the seamless service that they can offer to their the EV drivers, but some of it is kind of like you said about the kind of the manufacturers, but also it's the vehicle manufacturers, but sometimes it's also the manufacturers of the charge points who actually, because of the fact, so if we can't get to plug and charge within a certain number of years, then what we need to be doing is actually making the EV driver journey seamless as well as we possibly can in other ways, which is kind of, you don't want to, if we're looking at mass adoption, you don't want a new EV driver to kind of try 3 or 4 networks out and go, do I do this first or do I do that first? Can I use a contact? Well, yes, we can all use contactless, but actually there's still, do you tap and plug? Do you plug and tap? Which way do you do it? Do you do a little dance first? This kind of stuff. We need to have that all working, don't we?
We absolutely do. And I think, it's not obvious when you first get a car. I mean, even me, who's quite a big car nerd, and also you always find yourself, if you don't have a charger at home, it might be different, but if you do have mostly charge at home, when you go to the public network, it's always like an edge case. It's the journey you do the least, and you find yourself going, okay, what's it going to be? Is it going to be an app? Is it going to be a contactless reader? Where are we going? Your kids tired and screaming in the back. You just don't need it. And I think also you just need it to work as well, which in some cases that's not always the case, as I'm sure is widely reported. It's certainly not as bad as I think people think it is, for sure. But I think in addition to that, the regs are asking CPOs to publish a reliability report, which really will hold a lot of people accountable to making sure that their network is reliable and is something that can be depended upon by drivers. So, but I do think there's probably more to sort of standardise some of these user journeys to just make it a bit more obvious. There's a lot to be done there, because it shouldn't be open for interpretation every single time you get a new app, probably.
I know, it'd be a bit like you getting a new phone without the box, or without the instructions, or without all this kind of stuff, wouldn't it? We've all moved from kind of like the old, I used to have an old brick Nokia, what I mean, that could only just about, it could do, was it, oh God, it had like a minor game on it or something like that, like tennis or something ridiculous. But, we've gone from the bricks to something which is like a computer in your hand. Yeah. But actually, we've gone through that with information that's helped us to understand it. And that kind of feels like that's what we need with charging, doesn't it?
And it does really. And I think it's a bit like kind of some of these like hygiene factors that you just start to know and understand. I mean, even if they are, supported by 2 of the main manufacturers, but things like Face ID and Apple Pay and stuff, they all should just be kind of, learnt things that people are using. And I think another thing to mention about the industry is that, there's a lot of strong digital product people out there who've built really good consumer-facing apps that use these things well. And I think there's so many discrepancies in how you could implement these things across the plethora of different apps and sort of user flows that we've got out there. I think it will get better, it will get standardised for sure, but it just needs to become a bit more sort of I don't know, obvious, I think, to people. So it's not so
Yeah.
stressful.
Because it's kind of, like I say, I have actually been to charges where there's no information on it, or very,
Yeah.
very limited information. And it's kind of like, hang on a minute, I'm just going to get my crystal ball out now and just see, oh, today I'm on this one. It might be
Yeah.
this journey. And it's just kind of having it. And we don't want to, I was going to say, just as an aside, we don't want to be chucking QR codes on stuff that could be hacked or whatever. I've just written
Yeah.
a newsletter about this recently,
Yeah.
about kind of hacking and stuff using QR
Yeah.
codes. But there needs to be something, doesn't there, that you can link to that
Yeah.
actually makes sense, that you can, yeah, because once you've done it a few times, it's okay, but it's that kind of level of early understanding, but also tell me if the thing's working or not. Give me it in real time. I need
Yeah,
to
just tell me
know.
before I get there.
Yeah, because what's
Yeah.
the point in me kind of getting there when I've got 40 miles left on my range,
Yeah.
and actually my car can do it, but if I'd have known yours wasn't working, I'd have gone somewhere else, or at least send me to another one that's
Yeah.
within
Exactly.
local
Yeah.
area.
Yeah, and I think again the regs will bring about some of this availability and reliability data in real time. It's like every 30 seconds we've got to publish it. So, in theory, you should be able to plan ahead. But even when you get there, it's still just having a bit of sort of commonality behind some of these instructions. If you're a first time EV driver, it's every day's a new day. It's really hard to work, and I think also it's funny because coming from a CPO as well, it's no joke changing those stickers across every unit. There's a lot of different factors to it, and you think, God, I forgot about the stickers on there. They all have to change. So you've got like one shot in some cases to get this right. So it's would welcome a bit of user testing and sort of validation around what works for people rather than just trying to surmise it. And a lot of these things, we're building stuff, and not all of us have been long-term EV drivers either. So it's like really getting into the mindset of a customer. And I think, there's a lot of things that have been built by people who haven't even driven an EV or charged on a public charge point. And I think that's another thing where we could really work to close the gap. But getting feedback and sort of a bit of validation would be great, from drivers.
And like you say, it's, if we look at it, we've both talked about you work at Agile and continuous
Yeah,
improvement. It's all the same thing, except
yeah,
mine's kind of on the Kaizen side and lean. It's about getting things right first time, because if you don't do it right first time, you've got to go back and retrofit stuff.
it's expensive in
And
that
yeah,
world.
exactly, that costs money. And why didn't you actually ask the customer in the first place what they wanted? Maybe they didn't know what they wanted when you first started, but there's
No.
no reason to actually keep them out of the loop when you move
No.
forward. You've got to keep asking them the questions, because how else do you know? How else do you know whether you are giving them what they want?
And also just watch them try and do it. We'll give you endless amounts of feedback as to how everyone is dealing with it. And I think in every setting as well, whether it's public charging or even workplace, I mean, the last thing you want to do when you're trying to finish your shift as a van driver is faff about trying to figure out how to plug a car in or get the charge started. It's there's certainly a lot more to be done, I think, from that user experience, for
Yeah,
sure.
and it is about it's got to be customer first, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has now because it's gone way beyond the sort of early adopted tech audience.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, as I said to you before we started recording, as we go from wide scale adoption, there are people out there who will not put up with
Yeah,
anything not working first time, or not being told that something's not working, or it breaks down part way through, because they'll be straight on social media,
yeah,
won't
well,
they? They'll be
absolutely.
just,
Yeah,
they'll be on social media going, rah, 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 this doesn't,
yeah,
blah, 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 EVs are, and chargers are, and
yeah.
all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we're in the position where we're trying to hang all this stuff together, and it's tough because I think perhaps what people don't realise is that there's so many different variables going on here. There's the software side of it, there's the communication protocols, the manufacturer, the payment manufacturer, and the car, and the person, the site, the power supply. There's a lot of different factors that make up the optimal experience for sure. So it's. Yeah, it's a tricky one, but exciting nonetheless to be
Oh,
part
absolutely.
of.
Like you say, this fast. It is a fast moving feast, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. From a technical side, yeah.
Yeah, it's probably a bit like I've never been to them because I'm celiac, so I can't. But you know where they kind of there's like a little sushi bar where it goes round in
Yeah,
a circle. You know, it's kind of like oh, and it's gone and then I'm back again. And there's another one. It's kind of like that, isn't it? Really?
yeah,
No,
definitely.
but actually, we are heading in a really really good direction in the fact that you're able to provide these back office systems for for the charge point operators and car park owners or
Yeah.
whoever decides to run those chargers is fantastic. What would you what's kind of when people find out about what you do at Fuuse, and
Yeah.
obviously like you say you've kind of you've moved from a charge point operator to kind of to an organization that runs back office systems.
Yeah.
What surprises you about what people are asking you? Like you could be surprised about what I've just asked you. Are there any things that people, you're kind of like, oh, I wasn't expecting that question.
It's a tricky one. I think a lot of people say, well, oh, my workplace has got a car park. Can I have a couple of chargers? I'm like, yeah, you can. And so I think people are still quite sort of like not turned on to it. And I think from a family and friend perspective, they're like, oh, we live too far away in the middle of the countryside. Can we have an electric car? And I was like, yes, yes, you can. I live in the middle of nowhere, as you can see, and we're fine.
Yes,
Yeah,
for those of you listening, she's got beautiful fields in the background and they look gorgeous.
I
And she
know.
has been and she has been talking about her 4-year-old as well, who is possibly the one you were talking about the child screaming in the back of the car.
Yes, yes, that one, and can't understand why it takes so long to charge the car up. So we quickly switched to a Rapids, and it took a lot less.
Well, that's always a good thing, but
Yeah.
screaming children is always a difficult one when you're a mum with a small child.
Absolutely. Perhaps there should be part of the driving test now that covers that challenge. Dealing with a child in the car whilst driving.
I think maybe let's just leave that one for now.
The next topic.
Yes. Oh my God. So if we kind of look ahead to what kind of Fuse wants to do over the next kind of few years, what would you say kind of what would that look like?
I mean, we're very committed to being the trusted partner behind EV charging, and I think it's more of that. I think there could be international expansion on the horizon. There could be more sort of more of the technical innovations, things like V2X, which I can't confess that I know too much about, but I think there's lots of different avenues there. But I think it's about being able to provide these businesses with a reliable offering to run their charge points, and I think it's what's needed. It helps the public network, and it helps fleets and workplace charging electrify their vehicles, and it's something that we're quite passionate about, and it shouldn't be so hard in the future. So I think we're keen to keep it simple and make it reliable for everyone.
And like because of the fact that you're an agile company,
Yeah,
you can switch. You can, like I said about that sushi bar. That's
yeah,
kind of
we
how
can
as that
change.
sushi bar changes, you can kind of keep changing the iterations and things like that, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've got a good customer base now, and I think we're learning from them. We're learning together. We're taking the feedback, and we're test learning and iterating on features and navigating this together, really, which is a good place to be.
And because of you being a bit of a car freak, geek, no, not freak, that's not the right word. A car, an ex-petrol head convert.
Yes, complete convert, of course.
I suppose,
Yeah,
like you say, this all comes together quite well for you. Sort of
it
seeing the
does.
driving side and oh gosh, this is what this, you've had the hardware through Pod Point,
Yeah.
and now you've got, oh, this is what this looks like now, and connecting all of that together. Has there ever been any times where you've kind of thought, oh right, okay, so now this has all come together. There's other things that we can think of. Are you kind of looking at different product offerings because maybe you've connected the dots, as it were?
I mean, a little bit. It's hard to say really because I suppose working from home, we don't actually get to drive that far. But I think there's probably something in this pay and charge and auto charge area. I think there's a lot more we could do in that side of things, And I think also I feel now being an EV driver and working in the industry, I'm a lot more confident convincing people that they could definitely drive an electric car. It's 100% possible in any situation. And in
Absolutely,
fact,
yeah.
even last night, my husband was like, maybe we could have just 2 electric cars. I was like, yes, my work here is done now. Thanks. So, it's starting to come together, definitely.
And that in itself, like you say, if your family, your husband, people are starting to recognise this, we're also going to get to a point where most people will have a friend, a family member, a colleague who will either have an EV or will be thinking about it if you've got an
Yeah.
EV, and then more likely, hopefully, she's saying, okay, more likely to come and ask you the question. I mean, I've got a
Yeah.
friend who her husband is he's moving to electric in November, so it's not
Nice.
that long since
No.
we. It feels like January was 2 seconds ago, but anyway, yeah. So in November, and actually, she's been asking me questions about charging, about having a
Yeah.
home charger, how does it work, and sort of like I've talked to her about regenerative braking and things like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned this. I love sharing it, because actually, do you know what? It's not that difficult once you, if you, it's not, I was going to say, it's not that difficult to share with others.
No. And certainly isn't. I think certainly when you've experienced it yourself, and I think with my sort of friend set who are generally petrol heads, having nothing's overtaken me since I've had an electric car. So at the end of the day, if they're worried about the driving experience and whether or not it's going to be the same when you miss your V8 or whatever, no, it's actually really nice to have your music louder. Turns out
Well, and you can, yeah, well, you can have it, you can hear it.
you can. Yeah, you
That's the
absolutely
thing, isn't
can.
it? But you can also
Yeah,
hear your child screaming in the back of the car, easier, of course, because it's
of
quieter.
course.
But then if
Yeah.
you turn your music off and then there's just the sound of the road, maybe you can lull the child to sleep.
I've definitely done a few of those. Digby has definitely had a few danger naps in the back of the car as a result, because it's just a lot quieter.
Yeah, and it is the experience of an EV. If there's probably a lot of people probably who listen to this podcast have been driving EVs for a while, but if you haven't, just take one out for a test drive. That's the
Definitely.
biggest thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? There's a much nicer way of getting these test drives these days too. There's all sorts of different events like that. The what's that, everything electric is it up in Harrogate? There's it's starting to disrupt how you actually access new test drives, which is great. I mean, from a female's perspective, that was always challenging, wasn't it? Going into dealerships and that type of thing. But there's so many nice sort of industry events. So I took Digby up to Harrogate last year, and it was like his best day out ever. I mean, he found an electric chainsaw, an electric lawnmower, and the the Valiant guys gave him a green Taycan as a toy car, and it was it was starting to become a real kind of family event, and you could go and test drive a car and put the child seat in, and it's a much sort of nice, less frictionless way to actually get involved and actually try these things out. And it's not many people who've driven one and thought, nah, don't really like that.
Oh my God, honestly, so Michelle, who works with me in Full Circle, and I think I've talked about this a few times on the podcast, but she is the person I've never known. I've never known anybody to get an EV as fast in my life. So she test drove one in Harrogate, everything electric in
Yeah,
May. That was on the Friday. Then on the Tuesday, her and her husband test drove. So it was an MG4 X Power.
nice. Yeah.
And then, that was the Tuesday, and then they had the car by the Friday. I've never known anything like it.
Oh my
Honestly, it was
God.
amazing. So,
That
yeah.
is incredible, which is very different to my COVID experience with one of my cars. I could have grown another human in the time it took. But I think everyone was in that situation, whether it's a petrol or an electric car. But yeah, that's amazing. It's a
It was.
really short time to market, for sure.
And they just loved it. I
Yeah.
mean, their first charging experience was pretty horrific, or
Oh,
his first charging, because of course he didn't talk to his wife about
or follow
how,
instructions. Right.
charging or
Yeah.
anything like that. But the actual car, they absolutely love it. So, and they've got a
Yeah.
home charger now, which is great. But they just need to get that. Again, this is other people have this. They need to get that confidence with the public charging network and the private
Yeah.
charging network if it's if it's available to use. But in order for people to make it easy, make it easy for people
Yeah,
who just started,
absolutely, to kind of spread the word at the end of the
yeah.
day. And you know what? I don't really miss going to petrol stations, I have
Oh,
to
I
say.
don't. The
I
only other
really
time I go
don't.
is for like, if I need to go and
Snacks.
get some food that I've forgotten to buy.
Same here. Yeah, exactly.
And I walk through the forecourt and I'm like, oh, that stinks. This really stinks. I really don't miss this.
Exactly. Yeah. It's quite nice being able to just come home and know that it's going to be charged at home. It's great.
Absolutely. So, okay, let's just finish on a question.
Okay.
And I've asked this magic wand question before. Okay, but not I don't ask it all the time. If you had a magic wand and you could make one thing better to do with, kind of either Fuuse or the charging network or whatever, what would that be?
Probably consistency around how the chargers themselves behave, because we're agnostic of manufacturer, and between the spectrum of different unit types, they often behave differently, even though we've got a common protocol. And I think some of those nuances are passed to the drivers and passed to us, and it would just be nice to balance that out a bit, because either you're working around it, or it's hard to predict what's going to happen. So I think having a bit of consistency in that side of things would be good.
Okay. I like that. I think that is a really good place to stop on, Lizzie, because
Okay.
I really think that there's going to be a lot of information that you've given people today that is going to be really beneficial for them. So, but for those charge point manufacturers listening, please listen to her.
Yeah, thanks.
And please do what she's saying,
Yes,
because it's going to
please.
benefit all of us. Because it will,
Yeah.
won't it? It'll benefit.
Yeah.
It'll benefit everybody using the public networks, or whatever networks. So yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely. But I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to say thank you for joining me. It's been brilliant. I'm going to actually say to everybody listening and watching, please share this. Please share. Lizzie's been really interesting and quite humorous as well, which is great. And actually, and she has to put up with a 4-year-old screaming lots, but that's fine because we all have been there, I'm sure. But but for those of you who have been listening and watching, please share this episode. That's the only way we're going to be able to get more people to listen to what we're talking about, and and then that's only going to benefit all of us. So yes, please do that. Like, subscribe, share, comment on posts, etc., etc. Anything like that is very, very much appreciated. So, going to say thank you again, Lizzie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Was it all right for your first podcast?
It was brilliant. Yeah, I feel completely at home.
There you go. You see.
All good.
So thank you. I'm going to say to everybody else, thank you for listening and watching, and I shall see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Electric Evolution. I really love bringing you these weekly conversations about sustainability, renewables, and building a cleaner future together. If you're passionate about positive change, please like, subscribe, and share with others who also care about these topics. You can also download our white paper, Plugging into the Future, at fullcircleci.co.uk and join the discussion on improving sustainable transport, or email me at liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. Thanks for watching. Bye.